Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. A black woman was killed by a police officer after she called 911 to report a disturbance at her home.
Breaking right now at 4, body camera video just released of the moment a sheriff's deputy shot and killed a woman in central Illinois. The video is disturbing and the reactions are emotional from the family all the way to the White House.
Lauren Victory has been going through the video. Lauren, the situation escalated very quickly.
Well, Jim and Marie, this police encounter turns deadly in just seconds, and we need to warn viewers the body camera footage is graphic, but not right away. The officers who were called to her home spent several minutes with her gathering information about the 911 call she initially placed.
Deputies arrived to Sonya Massey's house on July 6th after she reported a possible intruder. Body camera video shows them searching her property and taking special interest in a car with broken windows. They knock at least 5 times, and Massey comes to the door, mumbling something to Deputy Sean Grayson, who responds.
Why would it hurt you? You called us.
The conversation appears to be wrapping up about a minute later.
Is there anything else I can do for you?
Then deputies ask more about that car and wind up coming inside Massey's house for some questions. They notice the stove is on. Massey goes over to the pot of water, and things take a fatal turn.
Huh?
Where you going?
Away from your hot steaming water.
Away from my hot steaming water?
Yeah.
Oh, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
I
rebuke you in the name of
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
Deputy Grayson's body camera shows his vantage point as he raises his weapon. Massey places the pot down, puts her hands in the air, and ducks. Grayson shoots.
That may have been a little unclear to see. So Massey said something about, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, and the deputy said something about, you better not, I will shoot you in the face. Just minutes ago, Massey's father, James Wilburn, talked about seeing the video of what happened.
I kind of feel like, Roxanne, it's a dream. I'm going to wake up, but I just don't know kind of what to say. I saw this happen in the George Floyd matter. I saw this happen in the Breonna Taylor matter. And I had to say to God, why me? Why my child?
Her father went on to say she did have some mental health issues and at one time sought help. The Illinois State Police investigated, and the Sangamon County State's Attorney's Office determined the shooting was not justified. Grayson was fired and is now in custody. He's charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated battery with a firearm, and official misconduct. I'm Lauren Victor reporting live in the newsroom, CBS News Chicago.
Lauren, thank you. Now to reaction from President Joe Biden on that deadly encounter. In a statement, the president said Sonya's death at the hands of a responding officer reminds us that all too often Black Americans face fears for their safety in ways the rest of us do not. Sonya's family deserves justice.
Ahead at 4:30, much more on the death of Sonya Massey. CBS News investigator Dave Savini sits down with a police training expert to break down the video frame by frame. Remember, you can also get the latest on our digital streaming network, CBS News Chicago. Find us on the News and Opinion page on Pluto TV and through the CBS News app on Fire TV and Roku.
Now, in this alleged incident that took place in Springfield, Illinois, 36-year-old Sonya Massey heard someone outside of her home. And as she heard someone outside of her home, she decided to contact 911 and have the police do an investigation. And 2 officers arrived at her home, and one of them, Sean Grayson, after looking around the home, told her that there was no one outside of her home. Now, all of this was captured on body cam footage, and on the body cam footage, Sean Grayson is shown further looking to escalate his investigation of this call of an intruder on Sonya Massey's property after he saw a car with a broken window on the property and decided to come into the home after looking around the property. And after coming into the home, this is where Sean Grayson decided to ask Sonya Massey for identification and ask more questions, and Sonya Massey then got up off her sofa, and as she got up off her sofa to tend to a pot of boiling water, she had an exchange with Sean Grayson, and the exchange of words escalated as the officer told her to step away from the pot of boiling water, and Sonya Massey rebuked him in the name of Jesus. And as she rebuked him in the name of Jesus, this is where the officer, Sean Grayson, made a statement that he would shoot her in the head. And then as she was again stepping away from the pot, she then ducked at several times, and after she ducked several times, this is where Officer Sean Grayson then pulled out his service weapon, shooting her in the head and fatally killing her. Now, the police in the area where Sonya Massey were living thought that this was an isolated incident of a person who basically acted and led to their own demise until they did their own investigation as related to the body cam footage and saw that Officer Sean Grayson was not acting on police procedure. Now, what's really troubling here as related to the case of Sonya Massey, this black woman who wound up losing her life at the hands of this white police officer, is that this incident comes 4 years after the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin, and 4 years after the murder of George Floyd, which the entire world saw. We really saw nothing change as related to the way police officers treat foundational black Americans. Because when I take a critical look at what happened with Sonya Massey, it basically looks like a case of a rogue police officer or race soldier looking to go out here and enforce his own approach to the law, and looking to go out here and enforce his own approaches to the law as related to looking to oppress black people. Because usually when law enforcement gets a call about a disturbance, what they do is basically look around the property, and after they look around the property, what they do is let the person know that they don't see any intruders, and they basically call it a night and then move on. Unfortunately, when it came to Sean Grayson, this was a man who basically didn't understand how to operate in police procedure, and that could be shown as related to his less than sterling record in law enforcement, with him going to work for 6 police departments and working at 6 police departments with a conviction for driving under the influence. Now, Sean Grayson had 2 convictions for DWI, yet that didn't stop this man from being able to become a police officer. Now, I always thought the standard was if you had felony convictions on your record, you couldn't work for law enforcement, but Sean Massey had something that other people don't have. He had white privilege, and that white privilege allowed him to be able to take a job in law enforcement, even though he had been let go or left these jobs multiple times and had a track record of basic dysfunction as related to being a part of law enforcement. I mean, when I look at Sean Grayson's record, it really reminds me a lot of John Giga, who I just did a video about. John Giga, basically because of his white privilege, was allowed to remain a police officer in Fort Lauderdale, even though he had an extensive disciplinary record of offenses that basically should have led to his termination. And it took an incident where he basically was shown on video making racial slurs, and even then they had to get the NAACP involved in order to get him terminated. And it took over a year to get this man terminated because he participated in this incident in Thanksgiving of 2023, harassing a woman before getting into that altercation with those black men. And this whole case with Sean Grayson really shows how white privilege in the system of white supremacy is a way to protect rogue police officers and race soldiers who clearly are not competent at their jobs, and allowing them to move from place to place as related to getting employment. Now, what's even more troubling here is that as you do more research into history, you can look at this case of what happened to this woman, Sonya Massey, and think all the way back to what happened to Tamir Rice. Now, back in 2012, Tamir Rice was shot and killed by a rogue police officer who saw Tamir Rice with a toy gun, and this officer decided to shoot Tamir Rice, and after shooting Tamir Rice, President Barack Obama and his coward Attorney General Eric Holder did nothing about that police officer, allowing this policy of unwritten rules for rogue police officers to remain in place, a policy where they could go out here and participate in taking the life of a black person and then be able to resign their job and then be able to go work at another police department. And that's what the killer of Tamir Rice wound up doing, going from department to department, because white supremacy allows that white privilege to be given to white police officers and allows them to go from one department to the next. And yes, they will fire a rogue officer, but that rogue officer's record won't follow them, and that's partially due to qualified immunity and partially due to the system of white supremacy providing these individuals white privilege to be able to participate in taking the lives of black people, because in their world, a black person's life doesn't matter. No, they can just basically try to justify it as a justifiable homicide, just like they did Eleanor Bumpurs back in the 1980s. Now, in the case of Sonya Massey, unlike Eleanor Bumpurs, we have an officer who is on camera saying that he would shoot this woman in the face as related to a 911 call that she made to basically get protection from the police. And as she made this call, she never knew that this whole call to that she was looking for help for protection was going to lead to her winding up losing her life over something as minor as standing next to a pot of boiling water. Again, a pot of boiling water that would not be a threat to that officer from the extended distance he was standing. But this officer basically, because he wanted to show his power over this black woman, wound up going out and taking out his weapon. Again, taking out his weapon as related to violating the procedures of the police, violating those procedures, again, escalating a situation into violence, escalating a situation that basically could have been easily resolved, and escalating that situation as related to things, showing us that as she looked to rebuke him in the name of Jesus, he basically was a demon, and this demon looked to kill a woman, all because he was insecure about being in the presence of a black person. Now again, this officer should have never been given the title of officer and never should have been in law enforcement based on his really spotty work history and his really poor record. This man should have never been given a badge, but this man was given a badge by white supremacy because they were white and they say so. And these white individuals basically gave this white man this job because they just wanted to give a white person a job, because in white supremacy, they make sure white men are employed, and they make sure white men are employed regardless of their qualifications for the job, because they want to make sure that that white man is taken care of. And it's more of a benefit to them to have that white man out here taking care of their business, which is keeping black people oppressed. And that's basically what this Sean Grayson was doing, looking to further oppress Sonya Massey. And Sonya Massey, sadly, what happened to her basically is what is the end result of, sadly, 60 years of feminism in the black community, 60 years of black women being strong and independent and not having a man, and not having a man to protect them, not having a man to look out for them, because a black man would have been Sonya Massey's first line of defense had there been a situation as related to someone intruding on their property. Had there been some black men in the community, they could have looked out for Sonya Massey and provided her with protection and covering. Unfortunately, since the black community has been indoctrinated into feminism, what happened is black women have no protection, and sadly, they have to go to the law enforcement that is controlled by white race soldiers, and those race soldiers basically provide no protection for black women. And this is the sad case that happened tragically to Sonya Massey. She had no protection and no covering, and she thought she could trust 911. She thought she could trust 911, but 911 led to her winding up becoming a 187 at the hands of a rogue police officer who wasn't about protecting a black woman. No, she was all about protecting the system of white supremacy. And as he was looking to protect the system of white supremacy, he was looking to make sure that she, basically, if she did not follow his unwritten social rules, which were a black woman has to do whatever a white man tells them. And that's really what the reason why he shot her was because she didn't follow the unwritten social rules that white men have as related to black people. And that one of those rules is that if a white man tells you to do something, you do it. And the main reason I believe that he shot Sonya Massey was because she did not submit to that white man. And he took it as a great personal offense, that this black woman had the audacity not to submit to him as related to a pot of boiling water, and had the audacity to rebuke him in the name of Jesus, rebuking his white power with the name of Jesus. And that's what really incensed this demon to escalate things, to pull out that firearm and take the life of Sonya Massey. That's what happened here in this case, I believe, as related to Sonya Massey, that led to her losing her life, was that this white man was so upset that this black woman just didn't comply with his commands in that whole situation, and he felt that since she didn't do what he said, he was going to make an example of her. That's what I believe happened here in this case, for him to go and escalate things to these extremes. Now, you have a lot of people expressing their outrage as related to this situation. You have people like President Joe Biden going out here and saying that things are very troubling as related to this case. But when I look at the whole case of these politicians, they're full of shit as related to this situation, because we could have stopped these kinds of rogue police officers with the first black president, Barack Obama, and the first black attorney general, Eric Holder. But those two cowards didn't have the backbone or the balls to go out here and deal with the rogue police officers who took the life of Tamir Rice. Moreover, they didn't do anything about George Zimmerman, and had they done something about George Zimmerman and the officer who took the life of Tamir Rice, and for violating their civil rights, we would have had a boundary and a legal precedent set as related to this situation over a decade ago. And we could have had that, but those two cowards didn't do anything. And we clearly see that the empty symbolic conviction of Derek Chauvin really isn't doing anything, because these incidents continue to go on. And what's even more troubling is that you've got black women out here looking to support Kamala Harris as related to her presidency, when she would basically be towing the party line and allowing more black women like Sonya Massey to become a tragic example of injustice at the hands of a rogue police officer like this Sean Grayson. Again, here we have a black woman, again, losing her life, similar to the way George Floyd lost his life, the way Tamir Rice lost his life, Trayvon Martin lost his life, and there was no tangible of justice, such as things like dealing with qualified immunity, dealing with real serious police reform. Not talking about that bullshit George Floyd Act. No, we need some serious, tangible, hard policies that punish rogue police officers and set a hard boundary. We've needed that for years, but sadly, we're not going to get that, because when it comes to many black people, they get spellbound by empty symbolism like Kamala Harris running for president, not looking at her record as related to black people. And sadly, women like Sonya Massey fall through the cracks because many black people don't look at the big picture, don't look at the big picture of what's happening to black women, because a lot of black women, because they got polarized by the gender war, they sat there and thought, oh, it's black men who are being the victims of rogue police officers. But these days, it's becoming more and more black women being the victims of rogue police officers and race soldiers. More and more black women are becoming the victims of rogue police officers and race soldiers, and that's mainly because black women basically sided with the white feminist, to go and turn on the black man. And now that the black man has been broken away from the black woman is vulnerable by herself, and vulnerable to herself because she walked away from the black man who God made to be her protection and her covering. And even though Sonya Massey called on the name of Jesus, sadly she didn't know about God's natural order, like I talk about in my book, why 70% of black women are single. And because she didn't know about God's order, she did not have a man there to be her protection and be her covering. And without that man to be her protection and her covering, when she called 911, she was on her own. And sadly, I see a lot more of these tragedies happening to black women, like what happened to Breonna Taylor, because sisters, you can't go out here and be on your own, because when you're on your own, you are at the tender mercies of white supremacy, at the tender mercies of them, because they basically believe that they are God and they can hold your life in their hands. And the whole thing is, calling them is like calling death. And that's the sad part about calling 911 for us foundational black Americans. A call to 911 can lead to a 187. You could have a person who's just acting out and they're upset about something, and it could turn into a great tragedy. And that's the tragedy of law enforcement in black communities. That's the great tragedy, is that a call to 911 can lead to a 187, and it could just happen over something as trivial as, again, you hearing some noises outside of your home. Hearing some noises outside of your home could lead to your death, and that's not the way law enforcement should work, and it's not the way it should work at all, because if you had men in your community would be your first line of defense. Men in your community would be that protection and covering, so that you wouldn't have to call 911. Moreover, if there were men in the community protecting the community, you wouldn't have to call 911 except for being a last resort. That's something many black people really need to think about, because, again, what happened to Sonya Massey is, again, a great tragedy in and of itself. But I look at the big picture of it, and it's the black community reaping what it sowed, later than what it sowed, greater than what it sowed, for the whole divide between black men and black women. And this is a sad, great tragedy, again, because black women thought 911 would protect them, but it's clear the white supremacists sees the vulnerability of the black community as related to black women having no men in their community. And this is what happens, again, when you don't have that protection to protect you and stand up for you. Again, 911 shouldn't be leading to you dying. No, calls to 911 should be solving the problem. And again, the problem was solved, but this beta male wanted to escalate things because he wanted to show how much of a man he was. And again, like I've said in many videos, when the beta male shows how much of a man he is, he winds up making a mess for other people, and winds up making a complete mess because he doesn't know how to think critically or problem solve. And that was shown by this man, again, having 2 convictions for DUI. He's not a good decision maker. He's not fit for an officer's badge, but they gave this thug a badge basically because they wanted to have him go out here and be like a paddle roller, patrolling the black community, have him be like a paddle roller. And again, because of his white privilege, they wanted him to have that job, a job he clearly wasn't fit for. And because a man who was grossly unqualified was put into a job, sadly, a young sister basically has lost her life lost her life because she ran into this rogue officer and race soldier who was never, should have ever been put on a patrol in any sort of system of law enforcement. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. Sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.